Hey guys, it's Miss Wesley here with you. So sorry that we couldn't be together on Monday for our normal live reading time, but thanks to the magic of technology, I'm able to record this lesson for you and you're able to follow along with me through this video where you can pause, record, or rewind, or anything that you need to do to help you understand what we're working on this week. Last week, we worked on finding the main idea with supporting details of informational text. Your task was, or your goal was, to be able to understand what the main idea is of a fourth grade informational text and to use details from the passage to support the main idea. So we're building on that this week, and as you can see, we have begun, a new standard. And let me present my screen. We are working on RI 4.3, and I know that's a little blurry, but your learning standard, your learning target is to explain events and ideas in a historical text, including what happened and why, based on specific information from the text. So basically, your learning goal is to make sure that you are able to understand what happened and why in historical reading. So, explaining information in historical text, including what happened and why, is going to be able to help you to understand what's happening in life. So, the more that we're able to understand historical text and why things happened the way that they did, or why the outcome was what it was, the better we're able to understand that, the more we're able to understand what's actually happening in the world around us. And boy, is there a lot happening in the world around us. All right. So as you can see, we're on page 24 in your Ready Common Core reading book. So you'll want to have that out and ready. You can pause this video and get your book and a pencil or something to write with if you need to. But we're on page 24. So I want you to think about some historical things that you have already learned about. One that comes to mind is we've learned pretty early on in school about pilgrims and the fact that pilgrims did come to America to settle. So I want you to think about why. Why was that the case? Why did pilgrims come to the New World, is what they called it? And if you really stop and think about it, you'll know that historically, pilgrims came to the New World, or to America, what would soon be America, to have the freedom to worship the way that they wanted to. They wanted religious freedom. So, the cause of them coming to the New World, or to what would be later called America, the cause of them coming is to have the ability to freely worship the way they wanted to. The outcome of that was that they settled in North America, and they began to establish a lifestyle that would later lead what would be the New World into what is now America. So, historically, there are lots of cause and effect relationships, and that's really what we're going to spend a lot of time looking at as we tackle this goal, our learning goal of being able to understand what happened in historical text and why. Writers of historical text, I'm on page 24, often organize information to answer the questions: what happened and why did it happen? This is sometimes called cause and effect. Cause and effect is a relationship in which one thing brings about or causes something else to occur. Historical texts don't just describe several events or ideas. The text also explains why they happened and why they matter. Again, the goal is to understand why so that we are able to better understand the world around us. So we're going to look at the illustrations that you see on page 24. And this shows an event that happened. And then one of the pictures shows what happened, the other shows what happened as a result of the event. So I want you to take a look at that and think about which event is which. Which of them shows what happened? Which of them shows the cause, or why that happened, the cause of that happening? Okay, so if you think about what you saw in those pictures, And then remember that when we're looking at something historical, which in this case, this is a historical set of photos, this is an event that clearly happened in the past. We need to understand why it happened and what happened. But it's important to remember the cause is the actual, the the reason why an event happened. So the pilgrims were not able to worship freely in Europe. That's the cause. The effect was, or the outcome, the result was that they moved to the New World. So if we look at these two pictures, let's look at our chart then on page 25 and think about what the cause and the effect were. So what happened and why? All right, so if we take a look at this, our chart helps us to really organize our thinking. So what happened? Well, you can see that in the second picture, the boy got a flat tire. I'm sorry, in the first picture, the boy got a flat tire. Okay, that's what happened. That's the main thing that happened. Oh, I got a flat tire. Okay, well, why did he get a flat tire? That's now the question. Why did he get a flat tire? And if you look in the second picture, you can see that he ran over a nail. So the cause of the flat tire, or why did he get the flat tire, is because he ran over a nail. I'm sorry, flip that. The effect of him running over a nail is that he got a flat tire. Why did he get a flat tire? Because he ran over a nail. Okay. So the cause was he ran over a nail. The effect was he got a flat tire. Okay, so if you will look at the bottom of page 25, it just asks you to consider what you think would happen next. What do you think would happen next in this scenario? So would the boy be able to drive home? Is he going to walk home? What do you think would happen next? I'm just curious to know what you would predict would happen next in that situation. I think he probably had a long walk home, probably had to get a little tire plug, or maybe he had to get, a new tire or something of the sort. I don't think he could ride that home. Okay, so thinking about historical text, I want you to consider what you know about cars. Historically, what do you know about cars? Now, we're going to pause for this minute and a half commercial break, and I'll be right back with you. I'm going to show you a historical video about cars, and we'll see if that jogs your memory and gets you set up for our next reading passage. So take a look at this video, and we'll discuss it on the back end. All right, so what you're seeing now are large quantities of people who have arrived at what is the assembly line, the factory that created the Model T car, the first affordable car for working Americans. Some of you may have heard of a man by the name of Henry Ford. Sounds oddly familiar. I think we've got a Ford factory or two in our area, so this should ring close to home. So pay attention to the fact that there are several people who are working on the same line. We call this an assembly line because they are assembling or putting together cars. So each person has their own task. Each person is especially trained to do their task. And then you get the result or the outcome of a car like this. So these are some of the earliest cars. We're talking early 1900s. I wasn't even born back then. So you can see there are special people to check the car out to make sure it's working properly. Each person has their own job, and they have the common goal of making sure that the car is built to perfection. So let's talk about how this relates to our reading. All right, see you in just a second. All right, I'm back with you. Now, after that brief commercial break, we should be ready to look at page 26. So on page 26, you can see that the title of our article is called The Model T. And I think you just saw a commercial about the Model T. So that should hopefully give you a little background knowledge so that we're not coming into this without any information. So if we look at the title, the Model T, and we look at the picture below, we can see that the picture and the title indicate we're going to be reading an article about a car. And I know from my knowledge of history that the Model T was one of the cars that was produced really for working Americans. So for Americans who really wanted a car that they could afford, because cars back then at the beginning of the 1900s were so expensive, and they're still pretty expensive. So as we read this article, I want you to think about what happened and why. So we're going to read this article about transportation, the history of transportation with cars. But I want you, our academic goal is to be able to understand what happened in historical text and why, or the cause and the effect. So think about what's happening in this text as we read it and why it's happening. Remember, strong readers read the text one time, the first time, to see what's going on. Then they read it again as many times as necessary to apply the skill. What skill are we applying? You got it. Understanding historical text so that we can better understand the world around us. All right, so here we go with Model T. When the first cars were produced, only wealthy people could afford them. Henry Ford wanted to build a car that the average working person could afford. In 1908, the Ford Motor Company introduced a new low-cost car. It was called the Model T and sold for $825. Although the car was reasonably priced, Ford kept thinking of ways to make it even cheaper. He knew that the lower the price, the more customers he would gain and the more money he would make. Ford's early cars were all handcrafted. This meant that each automobile was slightly different from the next. It also meant that each took a long time to make. Ford decided his cars would no longer be handcrafted. They would be put together in exactly the same way, saving time and money. In 1913, Ford began producing cars with the help of a moving assembly line. The moving assembly line achieved Ford's goal of turning out a car faster and for increasingly lower prices. In time, Ford's factory was turning out one automobile every 90 minutes. By 1915, the Ford Motor Company was earning record profits. And by 1918, half of all cars in the United States were Model Ts. Almost overnight, the United States became a nation on wheels. Okay, so I want you to go back on your own, pause this video, and read this article again on your own. And look at the close reader habit at the bottom. It says to underline words and phrases that help you figure out why more people began owning cars. So as you're reading again, I want you to take your pencil or whatever you're writing with and underline words or phrases that help you figure out why more people began to buy cars. So pause the video. All right, now that you have paused the video, hopefully, and you have come up with some phrases that try to help you figure out why more people bought cars, I do want to clarify some words or phrases that might be a little difficult to understand. For example, let's think about it. What was the Model T? What was the Model T? That's right. It was a new low-cost car. Who do you think Henry Ford was? Who do you think Henry Ford was? He was a man who built cars. Very nice. Um, what is the article mostly about? Nice virtual high five. It's mostly about Henry Ford and how he developed or made the Model T. Very nice. So the term reasonably priced, okay, that is a phrase that people use a lot. That means that it's something has a price that is that most people would approve of. It's affordable, is mostly what reasonably priced means. Now, what's reasonably priced to me might not be reasonably priced to you. So for $825, during that time, that was a reasonable price for most Americans. So that was the price that allowed most Americans to be able to afford to buy a car. That tells me that most cars were well above $825 before the Model T was invented. So in my mind, I'm curiously thinking, how much were the other cars? How long did it take them to get built? What kind of process did they use to build their cars? So I'm ready to do some more research. Maybe you are too. Okay, so let's now take a look at page 27. And on page 27, we have a few things that are going to help us get through understanding what happened and why when we're thinking about the Ford Motor Company and what it did from 1908 to 1913. Okay, so what happened in 1908? Well, if you go back to the text in paragraph 1, it says in 1908, the Ford Motor Company introduced a new low-cost car. It was called the Model T and sold for $825. So what happened in 1908? Ford introduced the low-cost Model T. Okay, why? Why did he introduce the low-cost Model T in 1908? Okay, well, I'm going to keep reading back in paragraph 1. Wait, Miss Wesley, you have to go back to the text? I'm so glad you asked me that. Yes, back to the text. Everything you need is in the text. So why? Well, in paragraph 1, it said, although the car was reasonably priced, Ford kept thinking of ways to make it even cheaper. Oh, let me back up because I feel like I'm going into something else. Let me back up and see if I can go find why he built that low-cost Model T car, because that sentence didn't give me much to go with. So let me go back up to the top of paragraph 1. Henry Ford wanted to build a car that the average working person could afford. Yes. He wanted to build a car that working people could afford. So what happened? He built the Model T. Why? What was the purpose? So that average or working Americans could afford them. You didn't have to be super wealthy to get a car. Well, let's look at what happened in 1913. Okay, going back to the text in paragraph 2, it says, these numbers stick out to me like flashing lights. I see 1913. In 1913, Ford began producing cars with the help of a moving assembly line. Oh, look like that commercial break. All right, so what happened? Ford began using an assembly line to produce cars. Remember, an assembly line is a moving line usually where each person has their own special job. They are specially trained for that position, and they must assemble a product that is bigger than what they could assemble by themselves in such a short time. Okay, so why did Ford begin using an assembly line? Well, why is because he wanted to save time and money. In fact, if we go back up to paragraph 2, it says, each car was handcrafted. It also meant that each took a long time to make. Ford decided his cars would no longer be handcrafted. They would be put together in exactly the same way, saving time and money. Okay, assembly line. What is the cause of the assembly line? The need to save money and time. What's the outcome? It's the assembly line. The cause, we need to save time and money. The result, assembly line. The cause, we need more people to be able to afford cars. The result or the outcome, the Model T. All right, so moving right along, let's then think about what happened in this article and why. So question 3 asks us to explain why half of all cars in the United States were Model Ts by 1918. Include details telling what happened and why. Okay, all of this is so that we can begin to really understand what's not only happening in history, but also what's happening in the world around us now. We need to be able to find cause and effect relationships. So here is a response that I typed to respond to why half of all cars in the United States were Model Ts by 1918. In 1918, Ford introduced the Model T, which average people could afford. In 1913, Ford began using the assembly line to build Model Ts faster and for lower prices. As cars became cheaper, even more people could afford to buy them. So this response not only pulls information from the text, I've got clear dates that are cited from the text of important events that happened from the text. So I know the 1908 and 1913 are two dates that are mentioned along with 1918. So I went back to the text and I summarized what happened in 1908. I summarized what happened in 1913, and I answered the question of why most people had cars by 1918. And I'm going to even edit this at the end just so we're specific. As the cars became cheaper, even more people could afford to buy them by 1918. At that time, by that time, by 1918, over half, or let's say, I don't think it said over, I think it just said half. Let me go back to the text. Yes, it just says half in paragraph 3, and by 1918, half of all cars in the United States were Model Ts. And I'm going to make this a little bit stronger. The text states that as the cars became cheaper, even more people could buy them by 1908. I'm sorry, by 1918. By 1918, quote, half of all cars in the United States were Model Ts. Okay, so I've answered all parts of the question. I've used my text citation or my text quotations. I've also cited other information from the text that wasn't directly pulled. That's why it's not in quotation marks. And so this is an answer or response that you would aim to provide. Yours could look a lot different than mine. You could have pulled more information from the text, or you could have stated it differently. But you need to understand that what happened was Henry Ford created the Model T so that working Americans could afford it. And he also created the assembly line so that he could produce the cars faster and save money. What can that help us then with what can that help us with when it comes to understanding life and the world around us? Well, we can begin to see why certain things are the way they are. Why do we still currently have a Ford assembly plant, a Toyota assembly plant? We even have places like UPS who use assembly lines and Amazon and things like that. So we can begin to understand why that is the case. Why would they use this technology? How come there's not something else? We begin to dig deeper in the world around us, and that just makes us overall more intelligent and more in tune with what's happening. Okay, so guys, that is it for today. I will be back with you on Wednesday for a live reading session. Guys who have watched this video all the way to the end, I'm going to say this, and you'll be the ones to know. There's only going to be one live reading session on Wednesday. Only one live reading session on Wednesday because a historical event is happening. The first female vice president is being sworn into office in a political battle that has been very interesting. So I want to allow you the chance to see something historical and to begin to think about what happened and why, some cause and effect. So there's only one live reading session on Wednesday, and that is at 1 o'clock. One live reading session on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Do not come at 12 on Wednesday. Watch the inauguration live with Mrs. Rupp or watch some clips of it on your own. Take in the history. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.